Police in Sheffield raided a house on Firth Park Road. What they found inside was a snapshot of a dealer who thought he was untouchable, a man who filmed himself boasting about making £1,000 a day, flashing cash across his chest, and even recording himself dealing drugs over the wall of his own home. 3 guns, thousands in cash, and more than 10 kilos of cocaine. What started as a simple stakeout would explode into one of the most telling examples of how Britain's organised crime world operates in plain sight. One man lived in a respectable flat with his partner. The other ran a vegan supermarket in Hackney and gave interviews about sustainability. Yet both were secretly tied to weapons, encrypted phones, and a dangerous trade that could have cost lives. This is the case of Jody Hall and Harry El Arabi, 2 men whose double lives collided in a police operation that exposed more than just drugs and guns. Before we dive in, if you're into UK crime stories and hidden investigations like this, make sure to subscribe. We post new breakdowns every day, and you won't want to miss what's next. It was the morning of May 4th, 2020. Officers from the Met's Specialist Crime Command had their eyes locked on Carter's Hill Close in Mottingham. They weren't there by accident. Intelligence, much of it linked to the cracked EncroChat network, had pointed them to a man named Jody Hall. On the surface, Hall was just another 46-year-old Londoner, but detectives suspected his garage and his movements were tied to something far more dangerous. Hall's life looked normal from the outside. He lived with his partner in Bromley, but that morning, as police watched, they saw him carefully put on a single plastic glove and walk towards a row of garages. He entered one, empty-handed. Minutes later, he emerged with a bulky item wrapped in a white plastic bag with green and yellow markings. To anyone passing by, it was nothing unusual, but officers watching knew this was the start of a transaction. And they were right. Hall placed the mysterious bag inside his car. Then he left the vehicle almost casually and walked back home. It was a move that suggested he was waiting for someone to collect. Minutes later, that someone arrived. Harry El Arabi, 33 years old, cycled onto the street with a rucksack strapped to his back. On paper, El Arabi was a completely different character from the stereotypical image of a London criminal. Raised in a wealthy area of Berkhamsted, his parents lived in a house worth over £1 million. He was educated, polished, and by 2017 he had even become the sole director of the plant-based supermarket in Hackney. He gave interviews about local suppliers, environmental impact, and supporting charities. But here he was, pulling up on a bike for an exchange that would shatter that clean image. Police saw the handover. The bag passed from Hall to El Arabi. El Arabi cycled off as if it was any other day, but armed officers were already moving in. Just minutes later, they intercepted him on Mottingham Lane. Inside his rucksack was the bag, and in it, a GLOCK handgun fitted with a silencer, 50 rounds of ammunition, and £10,000 in cash. He also carried an EncroChat phone, the same kind used by organised criminals across Europe. Back at Carter's Hill Close, Hall wasn't going to get far either. Armed officers intercepted him too, and another encrypted phone was seized. That's when the searches began. At Hall's flat, detectives found around £4,000 in cash. But more importantly, they discovered 11 kilos of cocaine, enough to supply hundreds of thousands of pounds worth of deals. Hall admitted the drugs were there, but claimed he was holding them for someone else to make some side money. But it didn't stop there. Police went back to the lock-up garage. Inside an old washing machine, they uncovered a revolver. And in a more thorough search, they discovered a Beretta handgun, fully loaded with 6 rounds. In one day, detectives had dismantled a stash that could have fueled both the drug trade and gun crime across London. Both men were taken to a South London police station. During questioning, El Arabi gave nothing away. No comment was his answer to every question. Hall, on the other hand, admitted the cocaine was his responsibility, but refused to speak about the guns or the handover. But the evidence was overwhelming. The EncroChat devices, the firearms, the cash, the surveillance, it all built a case prosecutors didn't need to push to trial. By June 30th, both men pleaded guilty at Woolwich Crown Court. Jody Hall admitted to supplying a firearm, possessing 2 more, and intent to supply cocaine. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. Harry El Arabi admitted to possession of a firearm, ammunition, and a silencer. He was sentenced to 6 years. The judge made it clear the presence of multiple guns, ammunition, and kilos of cocaine was not just criminal, it was dangerous. Every gun and every bullet represented a potential life lost. For detectives, the case was part of something much bigger. Operation Eternal. This was the Met Police's branch of Operation Venetic, the international crackdown that saw 746 people arrested in the UK when EncroChat, the so-called WhatsApp for criminals, was hacked by European investigators. Hall and El Arabi weren't just 2 men making a deal in Mottingham. They were part of a web of organised crime that stretched across Britain and beyond. What makes this case so striking isn't just the weapons or the cash, it's the double lives. Hall living quietly in a flat, hiding cocaine and firearms. El Arabi presenting himself as a community-minded vegan entrepreneur, while secretly handling silenced pistols and bags of cash. It's a reminder that organised crime doesn't always look like the stereotype. It can wear a suit, it can run a business, it can live in the suburbs. And that's exactly why the EncroChat operation was so powerful. It pulled back the curtain on a hidden world, one where guns and drugs flow behind closed doors, sometimes from the most unexpected of people. That's the case of Jody Hall and Harry El Arabi, 2 men whose secret partnership ended in one of London's most telling raids. If you found this breakdown interesting, make sure to hit subscribe. And if you want to dive deeper, check out our video on Britain's biggest ever gun seizure. It's a case that shows just how far these networks really go. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.